Well, two of the most influential and controversial people in the world had a little sit-down just yesterday as we record this, and the results were fascinating. Hi, everybody. I'm Bill Whittle here with Steve Green and Scott Ott, and I'm talking, of course, about Elon Musk interviewing Donald Trump for pushing 2 hours, certainly an hour and a half, and a little more than that, I think it was. And what we found was Donald Trump was making serious, actual answers to issues about the border, the economy, and so on. But thing I'm more interested in, guys, is this alliance, because it's clearly what it is now. Now, I don't know if it's a Photoshop picture, but I suspect it was not. I saw a picture of Elon Musk wearing a Make America Great Again hat, and I thought, this is the most important endorsement in the world. I genuinely believe that. But here's kind of where I'm going with this. Steve, the progressive vision for the future has always, at least for the last 20 years, it's funny that they use the term progressive because it's a very regressive future. The future that the left wing is talking about is always a future about less. Turn your thermostats, down in the winter and up in the summer. We are running out of electricity. The planet is dying. Everything's falling apart. We're a police state, and so on and so on and so on. And then on the other hand, we've done so many segments on Elon Musk, but one of the reasons we've done them is because I've been a space fan my entire life.
Same.
And after watching the space shuttle go around in circles for 30 years, it was only when SpaceX began to really hit its stride that I felt some hope for the future. And it makes me practically water at the mouth to think about what would happen if Donald Trump is elected in November and gets out of SpaceX's way, and not just SpaceX. If you have a leader who talks about a future that's a positive future, it's a growth future. We're going to Mars, and we've got the. I took a ride in a Tesla's. I don't know if I mentioned this on the show before. A friend of mine had the Tesla Sports, the Roadster, the sports car, and he got the Plaid. He got the Plaid edition, which was 900 horsepower dispersed over 4 different electric motors.
Immediate torque. Full
Let me
torque
tell you
as
something.
soon as you push the pedal down, because it's electric.
I've been in Corvettes and stuff, and I felt like real acceleration. But when this guy, it was late at night when they picked me up at the airport. He slowed down to about 10 miles an hour in the middle of the freeway, and then he there's like a launch button, and he punched it. And it wasn't a question of me feel like, wow, I'm going fast. I grayed out. I just grayed out from the G-forces. And my reaction wasn't, wow, this is cool. My reaction is, what's happening? What's happening? He went from 0 to 100 to 130 in just 2 or 3 seconds. It's just astonishing. But this is my point, right?
Motorcycle acceleration.
The future, it's the most astonishing thing I've ever been involved with. But here are two guys who are talking about a bright future. Morning in America again, make America great again, and on the other hand, you've got, I think, without question, the most important single human being in the world, richest man in the world, the man who's innovating on so many fronts, is not just kind of like coming out for Donald Trump. He's like a booster now. Don't you think that's at the very least an interesting combination?
Yeah, it is. And let me tell you about a phenomenon I noticed a couple of years ago now that is just it's yet another example of that left-wing hive mind that exists only in the present moment. Anything that has become inconvenient does not exist anymore.
I know where you're going with this.
It breaks. And the commenters at Ars Technica is a tech site that I mostly read because Eric Berger, their senior space reporter, is just the best space reporter in the business. And Ars comments, the first page is always very useful. You get to the second page of their comments, and man, you're in the cesspit now. Yeah. It turns so quickly. And the commenters there turned against Elon Musk. They did a 180 on him. Oh my God, this guy's going to take us to Mars too. Oh my God, he's a fascist. The minute he bought Twitter and said he was going to open it back up to free speech. I mean, boom, just like that. Yeah, the hive mind has made him an unperson. Okay. Fine. Well, Elon's still got his platform. You're still, an internet rando bitching on Ars Technica comments. I think I know who the winner is in this one. That said, Bill, you talked about getting out of Elon Musk's way. I wrote about a SpaceX milestone on Monday for PJ Media, another SpaceX milestone. So I've got some of these numbers fresh in my brain. I want to share this with you. On Sunday, a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket on a Space Force mission tied a SpaceX record by making its 22nd flight. It was only 2017, just 7 years ago, when the first Falcon 9 made a second flight. And the hope was to get a Falcon 9 up to 10 flights. Now we've had two of them that have flown to 22, or that have flown 22 times, two of them. And the hope from SpaceX now is they can get the Falcon 9, and keep in mind, the Falcon 9 is going to be made obsolete very soon here by Starship, we hope. That the Falcon 9, they can get those up to 60 launches each with as they continue to iterate this design. It's just a marvel. And nobody else, if somebody else were to fly a rocket a second time today, they would be 9 years behind SpaceX.
That's right.
Yeah.
Because nobody else has done this. So, I mean, 7 years. So this is a big deal. And what SpaceX has done was not considered impossible, but wasn't pursued because basically of a lack of imagination. I've got a personal story about this. One of my best friends passed away a couple of years ago, but he was an actual rocket scientist, went to Cal Poly, I believe, and got hired straight out of school by Marietta. And Marietta got purchased or merged with Martin. So then he worked for Martin Marietta. They got purchased by Lockheed, and so then he worked for Lockheed Martin. Lockheed Martin then spun out their launch division along with Boeing to create ULA. So Ed then worked for United Launch Alliance. He had one job interview his entire working career, and yet worked for all these different companies due to mergers, acquisitions, and a spinoff. And in about 2011, 2012, when Elon Musk first unveiled his plans for reusable rockets, my friend Ed scoffed at this. And by the way, Ed, he could assemble an Atlas missile blindfolded, or an Atlas rocket, I should say, blindfolded. His fingerprints were on pretty much every part of the Atlas III. This guy was a hardcore engineer, okay? So just keep that in mind when I tell you the rest of the story. Ed scoffed at the idea of reusable rockets. He said, it's not like we haven't looked into this. It's technically possible to do. It just doesn't make any economic sense. The demand isn't there to deal with the compromises you'd have to make a reusable rocket. And what Elon Musk and the other new space companies, as we've come to call these startups, said is if we can reduce price enough, we will create the demand. And what Elon Musk has done is to create his own demand with Starlink. Starlink generates the launch demand and the cash flow to keep SpaceX at least 7 years ahead of everybody else. It's the most brilliant business model we'll ever see in our lifetimes, unless Elon Musk maybe comes up with something better. So we look at these milestones and we look at what's happening with Starship. Now, Falcon reusability drove down launch costs by 40%. The hope with Starship is to drive those costs down by at least 90% and maybe 99%. So we're talking 1 or 2 orders of magnitude cheaper to get into space. Yeah. And this is what Elon Musk has done in a high regulatory environment.
Exactly.
You get the shackles off of that man, and oh my God, I was about to say the sky's the limit, but I think he's going to blow past that, Bill.
Yeah. And it's not just Elon Musk. There, as you mentioned, there's a number of startup space companies, number of they're basically almost like mom and pop defense companies that are doing things that the old school guys just can't even imagine. Scott, I noticed something else about Elon Musk and Donald Trump that they seem to have in common, and that is that they hit back. The last exchange I remember, Gavin Newsom had said something about Elon Musk. He said, you took a knee to this or something like that. And Elon Musk tweeted back, he said, you've been on your knees your entire life. You know, and it's well known that Elon Musk voted for Joe Biden in 2020. Watching Elon Musk's journey has been really fascinating, you know, from the days of COVID when he basically said, we're going to open up the floor of our factory and we're going to work. And this is when Tesla was in California. And he says, if you're going to come arrest anybody, come and arrest me because I'm opening this plant. And they didn't do anything. Yeah. He fights back, and every single time you can almost watch that Elon Musk is not like migrating to the Republican Party so much as the Democrats are just pushing him away. When Gavin Newsom signed the legislation that said that in California underage kids can have transgender surgery without the parents being notified, Musk said, okay, well, I'm taking SpaceX out of California. That's not an inexpensive thing to do, you know? So the guy's got principles, and I just like to think that together, again, I'm using Musk as an example for all kinds of entrepreneurial startups that are available in this country. We could see a renaissance of American innovation and manufacturing and technology. We could actually get the future that I was promised as a kid back in the space age.
I think there's a mindset shift that needs to happen in government, and it's hard to imagine it happening without a complete reordering of the bureaucratic infrastructure. I read a brief headline this morning that some people were upset that saying SpaceX has polluted some area around one of its launch complexes that it uses either in Texas or Florida or California. I can't remember which one.
Caused a danger to the Guatemalan water snake or something like that.
But what I immediately thought was, if I were running the government, if I were running the government, my thought would be, man, this is really cool what SpaceX is doing. Let's come alongside them and see if we can remediate this. Not as a punitive agency coming in and slapping their wrist and saying, you've done bad and you need to clean something up, but coming alongside of them and say, hey, we're really excited about the work you're doing here. We have noticed that there's this issue of, some sort of toxic, whatever it is that they're complaining about now. And let's see what we can together do about this. Is there any expertise we can bring to bear on this? We've got tons of research that have been done over the years. We're tapped into all kinds of scientists who are on government grants, who are doing work. What can we do to help advance this thing that's so obviously good for the country and for the world, honestly? And that's just like a little snapshot of something that if you had somebody in government, in executive or legislative branches of government who had that mindset, and it was kind of like the way Nikki Haley used to tell when she was governor, told people to answer the phone, it's a great day in South Carolina, how may I help you? Kind of that attitude, instead of, hey, I am here from the government, I'm here to slap you around, it would make such a big difference. And when you deal with individual people, like when you talk to people who work for some government agency on a person-to-person basis, not in their office, inevitably I tend to meet people like that and I'm like, oh, they seem like nice people. And then they plug them into that machine, and next thing you know, they're reading from policy manuals and making everybody feel like they've done something wrong, instead of coming alongside and saying, hey, we're supposed to be facilitating commerce, making commerce regular. What can we do to help that to happen here? And I'm hoping that any kind of, I know that Elon Musk has now said he's got a super PAC that's thrown its support behind Donald Trump. They had some challenges with that. There was a story in today's paper about how they brought in a bunch of consultants and then they fired those consultants, and now they've got different people working on it. But they're trying to get out the vote for President Trump. They're trying to get more people registered. They're trying to get marginal voters to become regular voters and things like that. But ultimately, what will make a difference is if you can bring some of that efficiency and effectiveness and launch cadence mindset that Elon Musk has to the business of governance. And you always got to keep in mind that guys like Musk and Trump they're out there a little bit. I mean, it's, there's not, I mean, it's a little messy, but
billionaires are weird.
But Elon Musk hires Gwynne Shotwell to run SpaceX, and she becomes the one who transfers his dream into reality and makes things work and smooths the ruffled feathers that he creates. He brings Linda Yaccarino into X and does the same kind of thing. Like he created somewhat of a chaotic situation, but it was necessary. And then she's coming in and saying, okay, here's how we make this operate as a business. So as long as you see leaders like that, like Musk or Trump, surrounding themselves with trustworthy people who can get things done in conformity with the vision being pronounced by the leader, then there's hope.
Well, the thing about Donald Trump that's so remarkable about Donald Trump and one of his great appeals is that he's not a politician. He didn't come up through politics. He didn't make politics his life. He was a businessman. And he certainly understands business. And when he was president during his first term, he dealt with our international situation as a negotiator and accomplished astonishing things like the Abrahamic Accords and so on. So Trump and Elon Musk have a lot in common. The problem is that, as I've said before, it's easier to tax a company than it is to run a company or to start a company or to grow a company. And it is an adversarial relationship because the government is dependent on revenues that are created by wealth creators like Elon Musk. The government doesn't create anything of value. They simply tax things and regulate things. There's an example that goes back an awful long way that many people are not aware of. But back in the early I want to say in the mid to 1920s, somewhere around there, the British government had watched the success of the Zeppelins that had happened during World War I and decided to build two of their airships of their own. They wanted two airships they wanted to be identical. And because of the politics of the time, what happened was they decided to have the government build one airship, the R101, and the R100 was going to be built largely by the Vickers Company. So one was the private sector capitalist ship, and the other was the government sector government ship with the full might and power of the British Empire behind that. The private ship, the R100, had no resources made available to them whatsoever. So they had to think about ways to do things less expensively. And their airship was light and extremely rugged and survived for a long, long time. It was eventually scrapped, I think. The government airship, the R101, had so many resources poured on it from the government and had such poor oversight that the thing had to be expanded to add an extra gas bag. And they decided to make their first journey from England to India, and they made it as far as the French coastline before it crashed into a hillside and burned and killed nearly everybody on board.
Oh, no.
It was so overweight, it was so fat and sluggish. And even at the time that these things were being built, it was called the capitalist airship versus the government airship. And we see this right as we speak with SpaceX and their Dragon capsule, which is being flown on boosters that are being reused 20 times instead of 10. They'll probably be reused 40, 50 times, versus the government-run version of the airship in terms of the Starliner, where they're saying now these astronauts were supposed to be up there for 8 days, maybe up there for as long as 8 months. It's just as crystal clear as it can be. And it's not just those two examples, there's thousands of them. So the idea of having a government run by a businessman who understands the negative effects of overregulation, overtaxation, is a possibility to unlock a future that I have not seen since John Kennedy and the space age. The possibilities are endless. So for that future to happen, everybody's going to have to get out there and vote, and not just talk about voting. They're going to have to get out there and vote in large numbers. And watching these two entrepreneurs together talking about a future that doesn't consist of us sitting around, eating our sustainable algae cakes while, while we, roast rats on spits over burning tires, really was an experience and a half. And I'm voting for a positive future where things get better instead of things get worse. For Steve Green and Scott Ott, I'm Bill Whittle. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time right here on Right Angle.